right. Jeremy, Jamil, hello. Grateful to have you on. Grateful for the time and grateful for the space that we've got to be able to, do this show. So welcome.
Thank
All right.
you.
Great. Thanks
Good
for
to see you,
having us.
Gavin.
And for everyone listening, welcome to another episode of the Vertical SaaS Podcast. Today, quite hard to actually introduce this one because one of the guests I've known for 15 years or so is a good friend, and we've sat on many couches, but not under these kind of circumstances. So, and that is Jamil Jaoui, who is the lead account executive at Jitterbit. And I'm also joined by Jamil's colleague, Jeremy, who's the COO, leading global strategy and scaling operations at Jitterbit. So again, guys, welcome and thanks again for your time.
No, thanks for having us. Look forward to the discussion today.
Yeah, and just before we get started, I think the best place to kick us off would be whoever wants to go first. Maybe just do a little bit of a broad overview of your roles, your career journeys, and what it is you're doing at Jitterbit.
Over to you, Jeremy.
So yeah, again, Jeremy Parker, COO, Jitterbit. Been with the business for a little over 3 years now. I grew up in telecom and infrastructure.
Mm.
So I got to see the boom, call it the Web 2.0 kind of phase of telecom, to where we were spending a lot of our time digging up the ground and laying fiber, as well as deploying, cables undersea. So I got to see the build, really effectively the build of telecom and infrastructure, and then kind of the transformation of it becoming a commodity, right? And therefore, a lot of industry consolidation, and spent a lot of the back half of my time in telecom doing M&A, a lot of mergers and acquisitions. I made the move over to software probably 8-9 years ago. Software is a lot sexier than telecom and infrastructure, and I've really enjoyed it. So I started in software doing a lot of the DevOps stuff, and now I've migrated into the integration services.
Yeah, awesome. Jamil?
Yeah, Jamil Jaoui, Senior Account Executive at Jitterbit. I'm week number 5. So my focus here is really enterprise sales, unearthing new opportunities and trying to grow existing accounts. So I've been in sales for 16 years now. Started off in outsourcing, so selling insurance for American Express, done a bit of telco as well in the Virgin Media space. And then was head of sales and business development for a fixed income brokerage for a few years. And I think it was around about that time the strapline was "Data's the new gold." So I was fortunate enough to be based up in Glasgow, and we had an office out there for Dell Technologies. Had some friends that worked there and got into a company which is a competitor of Jitterbit, and was there for 7 years. So founding member of the EMEA inside sales team. Was in that role for probably about a year, and then went into commercial selling, and then for the last 3 and a bit years, enterprise sales. And then I spoke to Jeremy about 6-7 weeks ago, and loving it so far, being here at Jitterbit, and looking forward to bringing in a lot more new customers.
Nice. And again, either of you's happy for you to do, but can you just, for the listeners that maybe don't know who Jitterbit are, can you give a brief overview of the mission, the vision, Jamil or Jeremy?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're a global company. We operate in, EMEA, Asia Pacific, North America, and Latin America. We provide a low code AI infused platform that really assists enterprise businesses in their digital transformation and really accelerating their digital transformation. So, it's been a lot of work over the last years. Jitterbit was founded about 12, 15 years ago, and we've really accelerated the platform over the last, call it 18 months, to really lean into the proliferation of all the SaaS apps that are out there, and businesses now understanding, hey, we've got all these respective applications out there, and they need to speak with each other and exchange data, and that's how our platform enables them.
Nice. And assessment of the market from, I guess, 2023 to 2024 for you, which verticals are you kind of having conversations with in terms of businesses? Like, what are the, I guess, areas or verticals that's piquing Jitterbit's interest, and where are you seeing the most movement in terms of innovation and that need for these integration solutions that Jitterbit are providing?
So historically, we've been, vertically agnostic, right? It's really more about, that back office use case, And I think across all industries, the challenge is there, right? So over a period of time, companies have grown up. They've got homegrown systems that they've leveraged over a period of time. They procured new SaaS applications, and that is prevalent everywhere,
Mm.
right? So now they find themselves in a situation where we've got all these respective applications. Some enterprises have up to 1,000 applications in their environment, and only 28% of them are integrated and
Mm.
and acting, in harmony with each other. So I think that's prevalent across them all. And how do the teams start getting these systems to interact and exchange data, whether
Mm.
that be employee 360, customer 360, and how are you getting that data to be able to inform the business to make the right strategy decisions on where to go next.
Yeah. And it's kind of like we've got a platform for every vertical, but sometimes playing devil's advocate, I think horizontal SaaS platforms can try to be everything for everyone in each vertical, which I think can lead to what we're seeing now, that uptick in specific vertical software being built. Like, how do you respond to that? Maybe if you're speaking to a client that says, well, Jeremy, how can your solution fit us in insurance, but it fits someone in industrial and someone in manufacturing, or what do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, if I was to look at it, manufacturing is probably one of our most dominant
Mm.
verticals from an
Yeah.
overall perspective, just because of the evolution of manufacturing. Also, e-commerce,
Yeah.
just as e-commerce has taken off,
A lot going on
a
there.
lot going on
Yeah.
from an e-com perspective. So we see that really picking up.
Mm.
And I think you look at some of the legacy, healthcare and insurance, they've got some really antiquated platforms out there, and they're looking to digitalize and get up, really move up market themselves. So we're seeing that evolve
Mm.
as well.
Manufacturing seems like it's a big one across the board
Big
at the
one.
moment.
Yeah.
And certainly e-commerce, I feel that myself, and
Yeah.
lots of conversations at the moment with startups in that space. And one thing that we met like a week ago for a coffee, and one thing that you mentioned, which I thought, from the listeners that are on, they're executives, COOs, CTOs, etc., across all functions, and you kind of talked about the role of your job, which is the CEO at Jitterbit. Could you maybe just give us a little bit more? Joined the company, what, 3.5 years ago?
hmm
Like, talk us through the journey, when you came in, what did you get brought in to do? And how's that been going?
So yeah, good question. So I effectively came into the business we were a certain size at that time,
What
and
was the size?
uh, we'll call it mid market.
Yeah, okay.
Um, but the whole goal was to really drive some scale and efficiency in the business,
Mm.
right? So over a period of time, Jitterbit was highly acquisitive, and had bolted on some acquisitions. And how do you really start to look at the organization and start to get it set up, not only from a human capital perspective to scale, but also from an infrastructure
Mm.
perspective to scale. So just like we do for our clients, a lot of my time was spent in the back office looking at our respective technology and understanding how can we start to use our own platform, meaning drink our own champagne and leverage the tools that we have to get our systems interacting with each other, and being able to expose that data to really understand what is our customer journey, right? What are the processes that support that? How do we want to align our respective teams for not only a better customer experience, but also to be set up to drive additional growth and scale in the business.
Mm.
So a lot of time over the last 3 years, a lot of the time and energy has been on just really kind of internally focused on getting us set up to really capture the demand out there, and provide that experience, the world-class experience for our customers.
Mm. And your job's obviously being the CEO, you're managing up, you're managing down, you're managing horizontally. It's a tough job. I know that a lot of CEOs are probably are kept awake at night. Like, what keeps you up at night, and what advice do you have for, I guess, CEOs navigating a very similar challenge to yourself?
Yeah, I think there's lots of things that have kept me up over the night or over the years, to be honest, Gavin. But I think for us, it was ensuring that we were breaking down the internal silos and
Yeah.
really expanding the communication and aligning each respective team on our strategy and our goals and objectives.
Mm.
So that kind of the shared scorecard
Yeah.
versus every respective team kind of running at what they believed the priorities were for the business, and really getting us aligned to say, hey, this is what we're doing collectively, and this is how each respective team aids in the success of our strategy levers.
Mm.
So yeah, just getting the team, operating effectively as one versus, we've got the service, we've got product, we've got sales,
Mhm.
etc. Really getting everybody aligned on this is where we're going and this is why each respective function is important in our journey.
Mm. As like a first time CEO, how do you have any advice for people taking on something like that? Like what's now that you've done it, and I know you've been very ops and sales focused at your career. I think this might be the first official title of COO, but you've
Yep.
probably ostensibly been acting in that previous jobs. But yeah, as a first timer, like what kind of advice do you have for somebody stepping into that role?
The big thing that I think is to step back and learn, right, and
Mm.
listen. I spent a lot of time with not only the leaders of each respective business unit, but also spending time with the teams to understand what they were doing, right,
Mm.
what they were tasked with, so that I could get a better understanding of the business in its totality, and then start forming, the right uh, views into the business to where we could collaborate across multiple different business units in the business. So it's just really just getting to know everybody honestly, right, just getting out and spending time and just quality time and kind of being a sponge, right,
Yeah.
not really injecting an opinion or a point of view, but
Mm.
really just taking the time to digest the business and really understand what each department was having some challenges with, where some of the breakdowns in communication was occurring, and how we could kind of push the chair back and really, come together and start collectively solving the things that were really going to move the needle for the business.
Mhm.
You ought what I found, to your point, done similar like functions, right? But what you find is people get it tends to be that everybody's trying to do so much, right?
Yeah.
Just so much. And then that gets multiplied when you've got product trying to do so much, engineering trying to do so much, sales trying to do some marketing. Everybody's got their laundry list of things. And it's really getting everybody together and saying, we can't do everything. And
Mm.
it's hard, right? It's hard for
So
everybody
what
to
do you
not
do?
do everything. It's like, how do we just get after the top five?
Yeah.
And really get aligned on the top five, and how do those top five, what's the connected dots between each respective group so that we're all aligned on a more narrow set of things that really have to get done,
Mm.
and then let that long laundry list, just kind of park it off. One of the things that I've done and what we've done is like it's kind of the what do we need to continue doing, what do we need to start doing, and what do we fundamentally need to stop doing.
Mm.
And that's a tough exercise. So that's one of the things that I've done over my career in here is what are the things that we know we need to continue doing, and let's continue doing those really well.
Mhm.
But to get to the continue and to get to the start, there's got to be a list of things we fundamentally have to stop doing,
Yeah.
because you just don't have that many ticks in the clock in a day, and you just don't have the resources to be able to do everything. So you end up spending a lot of time on that. Well, what do we just stop, and what are going to be the impacts of us stopping doing some of these things? And you
Mm.
find that a lot of the things that were on the stop list, you probably didn't need to be doing, or they were for a period of time in the past, and they're not going to serve us going forward.
Yeah. Probably non-revenue generating
Non-revenue
tasks.
generating, or just
Mm.
just slightly disconnected from where we really want to go. So
Mm.
just kind of recasting the vision, and recasting the initiatives and the objectives, and effectively, for lack of better terminology, the KPIs of the business,
Mm. Yeah.
and aligning the initiatives around those key KPIs. And then you get to a narrow set. What are some of the things we're doing really well that support those respective KPIs for the business? What are things we should really start doing that are going to fundamentally help us drive that scale, efficiency, growth that we're looking for? And what things don't support that anymore that might have supported us 5, 6 years ago, but aren't going to support the vision going forward?
Mm.
It's like, it's like that. What got you here isn't going to get you there.
Yeah, or the people that get you there don't typically get you there as
Yeah.
well.
So
Yeah.
it's also looking at people, it's looking at processes, it's looking at structure, it's looking at our own operating systems that we need, that were in place. So it was a lot probably for the first, year to 18 months, just a lot of learning and a lot of just documentation, a lot of understanding, and then mashing that all together and saying, okay, these are the things that go away, and these are the things that we're going to invest in going
Mm.
forward.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't envy your job.
It is something different every day.
Yeah, Jamil,
Which
I
is
wanted
good.
to bring you in because
Yes.
kind of similar question to Jeremy around the COO advice for first timers, people going on that journey.
Yeah.
Your journey that probably most don't know is that you spent best part of 7 years at Dell or Bimmy, an
Yeah.
integration platform, and
Correct.
you were there as almost a founding member within an existing org that is Dell, and you were a consistent sales performer, top
Yeah.
global presence club performer,
Mm-hmm.
year in, year out until very recently, until you joined Jitterbit. Like, I'm always fascinated by high performing sales teams or engineering or whatever function it may be that,
Yeah.
but particularly in sales, when we talk about someone that consistently performs against someone that, well, doesn't. So
Mm-hmm.
really talking about an A player and a B player. Um, like, what do you kind of see of people that maybe are falling off or maybe not hitting their consistent numbers, and
Yeah.
how do you manage to do that consistently for 6-7 years constantly?
Yeah, great question, Gav. I think there's a couple of things there. So I think personally for me is trusting the process. So, if you look at sales mythology, Medpick, Sandler, command of the message, it's really becoming an expert in those processes and trusting that process because they're tried and tested. And once you start to leverage those mythologies, once you learn the process, whether it be sales mythology, whether it's your internal processes, knowing the right people to network with internally, building that mentorship and the right network, I think that's a vital skill that you need to leverage. And as I say, in building out those processes, and whilst you're going through that cycle again, really leaning into the process and trusting that it's going to go in the right direction, and that you're going to be the chosen vendor by the end of that. I think number 2 could be quite controversial, but I think it's checking your ego at the door, and remaining humble. So what I've seen, I've been in software sales now for 7 going on 8 years. I've seen a lot of people that have been doing this for a long time that kind of seem to think they've been there, done that, and wore the t-shirt, for lack of a better term. And I've got a really good friend who's a chief revenue officer at a rec tech company, and he always talks about marginal gains, being better, 1% better every single day. And I think if you check your ego at the door, and you're willing to learn, and you're willing to go out and follow new processes, then that's in the long run, it's always going to stand you in good stead. So, having those marginal gains, trusting the process, and then when you work for companies like Jitterbit who've got cutting edge technology, you're a leader in certain independent analyst forums, then that all absolutely helps. Something that's been great for me is mentorship and reverse mentorship. I think you need to go into an organization, find yourself a really good mentor, not necessarily someone from the sales organization, because you want to see things from a different perspective. And I'm all about reverse mentorship as well. So, throughout my career, I've tried for people that are new coming in, to instill some wisdom in them, any wisdom that I've got, because it can be daunting, right? If you're coming into a sales organization, where people do tend to have egos, and it's your first stab at doing that type of role. Your first 3-6 months are vital. You need to get comfortable. You need to really put yourself out there. So, I've been in those situations, and I try and give that advice, that mentorship that I can. But yeah, I think those are sort of the key ones that.
Trusting the
And
process.
I think you bring up a good point around just ego in general, and that can span across the business in its totality.
Yeah,
I was going to ask you how you manage that, because when we're talking about an A player is like, let's just say Jamil, right? Jamil's an A player. He turns up and he delivers and he's consistent in everything that he does year in, year out. A B player is someone that's probably just hitting target, just doing enough to not be, But how do you kind of manage that? Because again, it can spread throughout the organization. Then before you know it, you've got an org full of B players.
Yeah, I think the important thing is just kind of shifting the mentality on we win and lose together.
Yeah.
Versus having teams and or individuals
It takes a village.
feeling as though that they're having to win and lose by themselves.
Yeah.
So we collectively as an organization want to be successful. And where I've seen, whether it be successful teams from an integration perspective or from an operations perspective or a product perspective, and more importantly, from a sales perspective, it's really knowing it is checking that ego, and it's about bringing the right people in at the right time.
Yep.
And that whole concept around let's do this collectively. We have an outcome. Let's either win or lose together. Winning and losing in isolation just is problematic, right? And that tends to be a little bit of a culture shift to say, how are we all in this together, versus how do we have a bunch of individuals running around. I mean, if you kind of look at it from a sports analogy, right? You could have some really talented players on a field,
Mhm.
and if they're really good individually, I don't think you're going to be going to the championship unless they understand their role
Mhm.
and they're collectively in it together. And
Yeah.
that's it kind of correlates back into a corporate environment or a team environment.
And
It absolutely takes a village, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not technical, so as Jeremy says, we need to bring in
None of
the
us
key
here are.
players.
Yeah.
And yeah, you win and lose together. But I think at the end of that journey as well, it's important to share. Even your losses. That I think they're even more important to share. Where you sit down and you look at what could we have done better, what approach could we have taken differently. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I think it's just being open and transparent. So a lot of that just goes to the business being able to expose that data.
Mhm.
Hence the reason why it's important to have these systems and
Mhm.
exposing that information to say, okay, you've got a B player. What's been going on with their activities? We'll use sales as an example, right?
Yeah.
What's going on with their pipeline? How are they engaging with customers?
Mhm.
And being able to just have that data more readily available to have
Yeah.
those coaching discussions and look at it more on a fact base versus from an emotion like, oh, you're not hitting plan, you must be bad.
Hmm.
Well, there could be a lot of things that are going on where, hey, are you not targeting the right customer base? Is the messaging slightly off? Are you not bringing people in at the right time to have the right discussions? And you can use that data to really provide, the right kind of coaching through
Yep.
a sales process or the right kind of coaching through a project. So as COO, that's big for me. Is like, how do we get the transparency from the business so that we can have that data available? So we're not acting on emotion or just pure gut. We've got some data behind it to say, all right, this is where we need to focus, and this is how we need to either elevate individuals or we need to elevate certain teams or groups within the business.
Mm. It's just when it gets to that point of, say, you can't increase the performance, maybe they're still digging their heels in, they still think they maybe know better. If you had to fire many people, or do you feel like your ethos as a leader is very much, I want to help people grow, I want to help people develop?
You always want to. I mean, I think as a leader, right? You always want to give the benefit of the doubt.
I think in this day and age,
And
it
but
is
in this day
just
and age,
numbers on the sheet.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're about revenue.
It's about
We're
revenue,
about
it's
results,
sales.
just like anything, right?
Yeah.
The business is about results. And there is a time, when you got to go through and say, are you the right person for this role?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or not.
Yeah.
There's lots of different methodologies, whether you're doing a 9-box or you're doing certain things. Like you could be the right person, you're just in the wrong job. So let's find you the right job that fits your skill set or fits, what you're going to be doing, if that exists. And if not, it may be time to part ways.
Mm.
But I think, with that data and with that coaching through that, you get to a point where like this is just, it is what it is.
Yeah, and I don't ask that question to be
It's
like
hard.
controversial or anything.
No.
I ask it because hiring the best people is hiring people is the best decisions a company can make, but also letting go of people is the best decision, and holding on to people for too long can also be
Detrimental. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I've just seen this over time, right? You can tend to be a bit complacent, right? You can get a little bit comfortable, especially if
Yeah.
you've been with a company for a long time, and you want to naturally fall back into that. Well, that's the way we've always done it,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the way that we always should do it. Whereas the market's changing fast,
Yeah.
right? So you've got to be kind of on your front foot, not on your heel. And you've got to be able to have that. How do you constantly evolve and change? Change is the only thing that's guaranteed. So having that mindset around change, those are the types of people that I look for in a business. That, all right, who's going to be ready for that pivot, because that pivot's coming faster and faster these days.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think as a top performer, you can have a bad quarter, but I think
Yeah.
it's about identifying that early. And then to Jeremy's point, when you work in an inclusive organization that offers that analysis and that coaching and feedback to better yourself, then you need to put your hand up and say, look, I've not been performing, or I've had a couple of bad weeks, couple of bad quarters, right? How do we get me back to where I was?
Mm.
And calling that out and having the courage to stand up and say that, then, I think that sets you apart.
Yeah, I think often, as part of the culture, one thing that, we've really tried is to be able to, and this is what I've seen just be successful, is don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
And you got to have a culture that is enabling people to ask for help.
Yeah.
Like if they get stuck, you don't want them getting stuck and then just going down that death spiral, right? Of, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do. and that you just go down. So being able to have a culture or certain mechanisms within your process to be able to have the employees raise their hand and say, I'm stuck.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And you want to encourage that, right? Like, I'm stuck, right? I've identified a red flag, identified a gap in process. I've identified a roadblock.
Yeah.
How can, again, going back to win together, lose together, how can we collectively solve that? Because
Yeah,
there's somebody, right? There's somebody in the organization that can help you get unstuck.
Yeah.
But they're not going to just naturally know it because they're busy in their own stuff.
Exactly.
I think you see that more in the early stages of a company, or the late. I think as the later a company gets, the least likely you are to maybe ask for help, because it becomes a bit more corporate. It becomes, I think maybe that psychological safety gets removed a little bit. I think in the early days, you're more of a family.
Early days, absolutely. I think everybody's wearing different hats, right? And they're all in, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to make sure that everybody's successful, the business successful, and you're burning the clock and you're wearing multiple hats and you're running fast and you're doing things. So, that entrepreneurial, as you kind of get into that 20, 30, 40, $50 million revenue mark, you can do a lot of what I would say like unnatural acts, right? And you don't have to have as many processes. Everybody's kind of doing things. But you start to get into the 100 million, 200 million and beyond, it does become a little bit more problematic. That's where it gets a little bit tough, where you can't just fly by the seat of your pants. You've got to have defined roles. You really got to have the communication streams. You got to have the right governance committees. You got to be looking at things differently. And I think later on it becomes a bit more, you get a little bit more of that perceived red tape, and you've got to be able to bust that a bit, right? You got to be able to say, how do we kind of push back? I've seen that to where it becomes a bit too robotic.
Yeah.
And then people get a little stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, kind of final question around more culture, because I do want to move on to more around what Jitterbit are doing with AI and what kind of conversations you're having with customers. But anyone that is maybe at that kind of senior individual contributor level, I think again now, particularly in the startup world, and you guys work with a lot of startups, again, probably more mid-market scale up, but the path to promotion is still unclear in those types of organizations. You come in, you wear a lot of hats, there's not a lot of structure. Jamil, you've rose with Boomy, and you're hopefully going to be part of the executive team soon at Jitterbit. Definitely after this podcast. But like, what advice both of you, happy if you both jump in, like for people that are trying to get, Jamil answered it to an extent, seek out mentorship, be active. But I think more than that, how do people just try and get from that? Maybe they're senior staff and just want to break into management or executive level.
Yeah, I think go above and beyond. Try and do 10% above what your actual role is. Seek to go out and take on other projects, and like I said, I think networking is very important. So we're a global business. If I just sat isolated in my flat up in Glasgow, I wouldn't get very far. So I think you need to make a good point of building out that internal network, your internal brand essentially. But as I say, I think if you go out, first and foremost, do your number, excel in your number, but then other general activities, get involved, onboarding partners, working with, bringing in new partners, looking at different sales initiatives, getting involved in training for new hires, and just, as I say, 10% above what your actual role is.
Yeah.
Try and deliver on that, and make the right contacts.
Awesome. Yeah, I think from my perspective, right, I mean, I've seen a lot of really strong individual contributors, want that next step, and they want to be a leader or a manager or something.
Yeah.
And I've seen some fail at that because they're just really strong individual contributors, and then are unable to make that leap to management and being able to, to delegate and to coach and do things. They're used to just doing things their own way. So they end up being like a super sales professional versus an actual leader. And there's a differentiation there. So I think, to answer your question, I think you need to really take a look, in the mirror and say, hey, what is it that I want to do? Yeah, it sounds fun to move up the stack, but what do I really want to do? And then, and to Jamil's point, mentorship is a really big thing, right? And I think, being able to find somebody, I've done it over my career. I still do it today, where I've got a series of mentors that I can pick up the phone and call, as well as some very structured mentorships to where, I'm bringing certain challenges, or I'm bringing certain things that I want to discuss so that it becomes productive and I'm getting the learnings from it. So I'll bring a challenge to a mentor and say, hey, these are the things that I'm currently faced with. You've seen them before, I'm sure. what are some options to tackling the respective challenge?
Love it. And look, moving on, Jeremy, you actually work for the private equity business that when they employ you into Jitterbit, and I think that's how you've spent a large part of your career. But you've got brought in to, generally speaking, stabilize, push the envelope in terms of innovation and scale a business and lead it to some sort of exit. Um, and I think you've been part of quite a number of exits, billions in transactions. Like for you, when you join a company, when a PE approaches you and says, Jeremy, I want you to take a look at this company. What are the indicators or the early indicators that a company is ready for rapid scale and they can and are in a position to move towards that sale, merger, or acquisition?
That's a great question. So I think first of all, it comes down to the market,
Mm-hmm.
right? So is the product, is the services, are they ready to capture the demand in the market?
Yeah.
Right. So are they at that place, or is there a roadmap for them to be ready to capture the evolution of that respective market? The second thing is the team ready to take that journey,
Mm.
right? From a leadership perspective as well as the team underneath them.
How do you know that?
Um,
Well, you don't never know fully, but
yeah,
how do you make the
yeah.
call and go,
You
okay?
know, you tend to get a sense pretty quick, when you start looking at kind of the operational cadence of the business,
Right.
and you look at, how are you looking at operating the business? What are the things you're looking at from a leading and lag indicator perspective? And is that aligned to, that strategy that's going to service the market? And really putting the big C in front of mind, like, is this all to serve the customer, right?
Yeah.
They're paying the bills, they get the loudest vote. Are we doing things internally because we think they're the best thing for it, or are we actually looking at the market, and are we evolving the product, our people, our processes to support ultimately that customer or the customers or the market?
Mm. Having kind of PE or VC back in a business, do you think in your experience, has it always been positive for innovation, for going on that scaling journey? Do you always feel like it is or do you feel like it's a necessary evil?
It's kind of it's I would say it's kind of both,
Yeah.
right? I'm listening again. An equity firm or a VC firm they're in it for they're in it for growth and payback of their investment. No different than we're in it from our perspective,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, it's kind of both. It's kind of both.
Yeah. Well, like, I want to move on to
But I've
kind
had
of
a really
AI.
positive experience with PE. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's you know the support, and again having the right communication cadence with the PE firm, and really understanding, making sure that the business's goals and objectives are aligned with the private equity firm's goals and objectives, and that you're staying in lockstep and you're not getting disconnected.
So important. Yeah.
It's not getting disconnected. As soon as I've seen it go a little sideways when there's some disconnect, right? When the business is kind of operating on A stream, and the PE firm is looking for it to kind of go on the B stream.
Yeah.
And really making sure that you're staying aligned on the timing, the expectation, and having that transparency into the business is really important.
Yeah. Nice. And again, wanted to kind of move on to the AI piece with Jitterbit, because I found it really interesting. Last week we spoke about it was AI Infusion.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I still don't really know fully what that means. So I'd love you to explain what is AI infused solutions, and how is that different to what's going on in the market at the moment?
Yeah, so from an AI perspective, so we spent a lot of time on this, and I know AI is a pretty big topic. But if you kind of push the chair back a little bit and you look at it, and we talked about this briefly, there's so many applications out there, right? And there's businesses are acquiring new apps to do certain things for their respective business constantly. Um, and IT has made kind of a shift, right? They're focused on maybe the top issues that are in the business, but the lines of business now are getting a lot more engaged,
Yeah.
and saying, hey, there's certain things that we want to do to drive growth or efficiencies or scale or whatnot. So they're picking these things up, right?
Mm.
And if you look at it, there's effectively a talent shortage on development from an IT perspective, right? Actual hands-on keyboard developers. So as we saw that from a business, we're like, how do we support a business to accelerate their transformation without having to burden their IT staff dramatically? So hence the reason the AI infusion. So from our platform perspective, we've got our iPaaS solution, and we also have an app building capability. So we've infused our platform with AI to help accelerate the ability to either drive connections between two systems in a workflow, so you can not have to have as much time and skill as it pertains to hands-on keyboard deep coding. You can actually use your natural language and say, hey, I want to build a connector to one of these applications that I have in my system, in my infrastructure, to talk to another one, right? So you're speeding up that time, and you're able to kind of start to get to that longer tail without having to really burden IT. And then from an app builder perspective, again, you're able to use our AI capability to build an application, kind of a proof of concept as a line of business owner. It's got the same security, and IT doesn't have to worry about the security aspect of it. They've set up the security on the platform, so they're not worried about that. They can give that power back to the line of business and say, hey, if there's something that you want to do, if there's a gap in an application that you want to explore, well, you now can leverage AI, because I've done it. I'm similar. I'm not very technical, but I can type, right, natural language, say, hey, I want to build an application for my customer success team.
Yeah.
I want to understand, kind of what I want to see some inputs from a customer success perspective, like a customer health dashboard. And I can start to build an application and say, this is something that would really provide benefit to the business. Now I'm already there without having to have IT, take a ticket and wait in line for IT to free up a resource because they're super busy.
Yeah.
I have now done it and say, now I can go back to my stakeholders in IT and say, hey, I've got this proof of concept. This will add a lot of value to my respective function or to the team or to the business. Can you kind of take it from there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And how do you measure the levels of kind of security, deployment safety, performance, fairness, robustness of the AI LLM models when you are going into one day speaking to an insurance carrier, or the next day you're speaking to a health, or someone in industrial? Like, how do you ensure that, yeah, you're mitigating the risks of them adopting the AI models?
Security is top of mind to everybody.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more prevalent, and it comes up in almost every dialogue.
Yeah.
So the nice thing about our platform, regardless of what service you're going to leverage, you're setting the business is setting up that IT logic, whether it be single sign-on, whether it be what data people have access to. All that underlying security is fundamentally built in, and it's controlled, for lack of better group, by IT or by the business. So they set that up, and then you're able to just go off of that. So the security is just there inherently within our platform, based on your respective business rules.
Nice. And both can come in on this, but the kind of conversations I was interested. Jamil's on the ground, speaking daily to customers. Jeremy, as are you, but you obviously broader remit. But the conversations that both of you are probably having, I don't know, let's just say pre-generative AI, ChatGPT, as opposed to now. Do you feel like businesses now, when you speak to them, they know what they want and how they can potentially do it, as opposed to maybe last year it was, we don't know what we want, but we just want AI.
Yeah, such a good question. I mean, I'll start, and then Jamil. I think it's still pretty new, right? I think that there's still a little bit of fear around it, right?
You think, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit, but we're seeing a lot of businesses want to leverage it. So if you think about it, a lot of the younger generation, from a workforce perspective, say, how come my company doesn't have AI, and how can they have it so I can do my job better, right? And then us older folks are like, well, great, we want it too, but how does it make the business more efficient and more effective?
Yeah.
Right. So I think it is coming up in every dialogue, and I think there are the security concerns and those other things associated with it, but it is absolutely prevalent in the discussions now. It's just still a little new. Still a little new. And how do you want to leverage it? Do you want to leverage it to help the teams? You want to leverage it to help some processes? You want you want to have it to help your call center interact with customers that are coming in. It's still learning.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Exactly that, right? We're in a competitive space, and when I'm speaking to a new prospect, they've went out, they've done their due diligence on the market. So one of the first questions they're asking is, what's your AI capability?
Yeah.
Can you demonstrate your AI capability? And again, we need to, we really need to hone in on that and tailor it to make sure it is the right fit. And again, going back to the AI-infused and Jeremy's point, it comes back to this citizen integrator model that we operate from. And, whether you're a novice or an expert, we can absolutely deliver on that capability.
Nice. And is there any kind of common in the past 12 months challenges that you find you come up against when you're speaking with, let's use startups as an example, maybe scale up 300-400 person organization, thousands of systems, and they're looking to go through an integration. What are the kind of common challenges or pitfalls that you see? Maybe sometimes they go with a partner and it doesn't go well. And then they're speaking to you, or they've not done it yet. Like, yeah, kind of top 3 things or 4 or 5 things that come up for you, Jeremy or Jamil?
Yeah, I think if you're speaking to a startup and they've got if they've got an IT team, a dev team, it's that buy versus build.
Yeah, buy versus build.
Buy versus build. So it's about educating them and why a platform is really going to excel and lower that total cost of ownership, but really enhance that speed to value, right? We and not going into those. I think in terms of the application side of things, is bringing on too many applications too soon that aren't speaking to each other and having that application sprawl as well.
Yeah.
So when is the right time to invest in an integration solution or app builder to start building out your own applications? So I think you have to have those conversations a lot earlier than most founders would typically expect. And then it is finding that right partner to go in and give that consultative approach. And that's the way that we certainly work, is to go in and really understand the business. What are the drivers? But where are the main pains coming from? And how can we build, I look at other vendors who are very much in it for the new logo. They just want to, rinse and repeat. Whereas for us, we are a strategic partner.
You're there after the implementation. You're doing the change management piece.
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly. We're a strategic partner. Your success is our success. And that's certainly what we deliver against.
Yeah. And look, kind of closing question. I'm conscious of your time and the time that we have here. Like, what are you most excited about over the next 12 months with Jitterbit? What is exciting in terms of integration, automation? Yeah, what are you looking forward to? What's on the agenda?
Yeah, for me personally, I mean, I couldn't be more excited about where we're going from a company perspective, and I think that's just correlated to just where the market is going. Just the speed and pace in which companies are evolving and changing, and with all the new tools on the market. Us being, kind of in the back, being able to say, hey, how do we stitch these things all together for you so that your business can run at the pace in which it needs to, and you can compete with your competitors, or you can service your customers more effectively. It's super exciting for me. Having been in the back office for so long, right? And having to deal with this long before integrations was really iPaaS was really a thing, right? You always had these big IT teams, punching on keyboards. I need these things working together, whether it be M&A. I mean, it's a really powerful tool from an M&A perspective, right? M&A is all about time to value. And the faster you can absorb that respective company, not only from a people and headcount and culture perspective, but also from its operating infrastructure, the faster you're going to get the synergies, the faster that you're going to get the time and scale. So being able to step back and say, hey, this is a tool set that allows us to accomplish that really quick. I wish I would have had something like this 10, 15, 20 years ago. Right? Doing M&As now and absorbing companies, I can do them at pace because I've got an integration tool that allows me to either connect a couple systems for a period of time, aka like a project based, right? Just being able to maybe link up 2 ERPs for a little while. I want to be able to report out of one, but I know all the data in, say, a country that I'm not ready to disband their ERP, but I want to see it all in the same. I can do that really quick.
Yeah, it's a huge unlock.
It's a huge unlock. Or what are the key systems that we need to stitch together fast? Or do we have 2 of the same CRMs, but I want to be on one? So let's go ahead and get these things connected and data exchanged so that we're all operating in one system. That also just helps the culture in its totality. Right. So that you're all now operating on the same blueprint, same processes, same systems, and you get going significantly faster. I think what I've seen over time, like you end up with all these disparate systems, especially if you're highly acquisitive, and it's really hard to get that 360 view of the business
Mm.
when you're trying to pull
Yeah.
something out of once. You're going to end up in Excel wonderland, right? You're pulling all this data and you're having a bunch of analysts do things versus letting the systems in which you bought do the work for you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's really powerful when you can get them all together. So I couldn't be more excited about the space and the time, because I think it's really, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jeremy and I touched on this last week when we were together, excited about what we're going to build here over the next year or so. I think the platform itself, what we've introduced from an AI perspective is revolutionary. And I'm super excited to be part of that. And yeah, I think, let's get back on here in a year, see what we've achieved, and excited to see Zanata grow as well. So
Absolutely, we'll have you back on, not a problem. Well, look, good luck, guys, with the journey, but it's been amazing to have you on, so thank you again for joining me.
Thanks
Thank you,
for
Gav.
having us. I appreciate it.
Cheers.